All right, thank everyone for coming today. Rules Committee, we're working on a drought management plan. We're not working on things that are outside of our purview. You got something you wanted to
Yes.
pass around or start with?
I have an outline of a critical period management plan for the Los Moras Springs. It's an outline that may form a good idea for such the questions that we need to, or some of the things that are needed to
It's going in the middle here.
And I didn't print enough, but I have what Janelle sent out to the Rules Committee members, the management zones and the monitor roles. But we can just.
So this came from where, and who put it together? Is this from other districts?
No, this is something that we put together.
Yeah.
And what it does is it establishes some. Do we need something? Are we all together now?
All right, we're ready.
Okay. So it essentially is intended to protect the health of the springs and the creek, from the spring, and it goes through the points about covering the bases, but the trigger, basically, there are two triggers. One is the Los Moras Springs flow rate, and there's a link. The link is on the second page. How you can get to the link, and you can check the flow rate of the Los Moras Springs. The USGS has been doing that for a long time. US Geological Survey has been doing that a long time, and you can just check it to see what the flow rate is. So it's readily available. The second trigger would be the duty well, and if either of those two triggers set it off, then we go into a conservation mode. The flow rate of the springs varies throughout the year from month to month, and so the idea is to take it to months rather than years, to make it more applicable to the particular situation. The second page is the graphs of the how the triggers would work, just appearance wise. And there'd be, for the first stage, there'd be a 10% based on averages from previous years. 10% reduction, stage 2, 20%, stage 3, 30%, stage 4, 40%. And then down there at the bottom is the link to the Los Moras Springs USGS monitor. It goes through on page 3 this should be transparent for everybody to see, the public, the district, the permit holders, etc. And it has we have a crop protection plan built into it, so that if you planted your crop before the critical period declaration goes into effect, then you fill out an affidavit saying that when it was planted, just get all the information, when it's going to be harvested, and that there won't be a restriction as to that crop. After that crop is picked up, it's harvested, then it would apply. There would be a qualification, there's a qualification language in there for the crop protection plan, and it goes through basically what I just said. To get out of the trigger period, of the critical period, there would be the need to once you see that it's getting out of it, we need to see that it's out of it for a 90-day period before we went from one stage to a lesser stage, from 20%, let's say, to 10%. On page 4, basically we're taking a 3-year average of pumping. We're using pumping, historical pumping, for 3 years, and get a better feel for what's going on. So it's a better gauge of the pumping activity. On monitoring, on page 4, it's basically self-reporting. There is the conservation district will be monitoring also, but the permit holders are supposed to monitor to remain eligible for the crop protection permit. On enforcement, it would be enforced. If you have violations, then eventually you lose a permit. If you have so many violations, but basically there's an enforcement mechanism that's it's not voluntary, it's mandatory. This is on page 5, there's a 5-year adjustment mechanism where every 5 years we'd be trying to make sure that it still works, it's still accurate. So we're trying to keep it accurate. The goal is prevent the entering into critical periods for a given month more than 40% of the time over a 5-year period. And there's a process by which this adjustment mechanism would raise the curtailment percentages, and there's a system to lower it based on the information. So this is not for outside of the springs. There need to be another system to deal with the other parts of the county, but this is just to address what we think is a fair way to try to get a handle on and protect the springs from flooding. That's it. And what I'm thinking is, since we don't have a lot of time, if y'all have comments, please send an email to me, and I'll try to respond or refer to different things that you might go to get more information. And so I'm willing to continue the dialogue after the meeting.
What do you mean by we don't have enough time?
Well,
today we're trying to get out.
Today, not
today.
It's today. Okay.
Today.
All right.
Well, I'd just like to say that you've got the Edwards, Trinity, and you've got your gravel formation. Clearly by these eye tests, you can see springs are solely being impacted by human. Not the Edwards spring. The eye didn't come out the spring. It went down Standard Lane.
You don't think Dooley's the right tracer well we should be looking at?
I don't even think these wells in South should even be considered because they're not affecting the spring.
I have another dye tracer test study, and it cites says a correlation exists between Los Moras Springs discharge and Tularosa low water levels, so that might be a good alternative based on dye.
To answer your question, in the September meeting, it's available through the graph. I think that's what Janelle sent out to everybody. If you scroll through that, you can see the different wells and the correlation to the spring. Now, it was something rather big.
Charlie, isn't the Dooley well over 90% correlated to the spring?
That's why Dr. Bill recommended the Dooley well, because if you look at those graphs from the September meeting, some of the wells were all which way, but the Dooley well, I mean, it correlated I don't remember
It's over 90%, it's like
it
92%.
was the one that correlated the most.
The dye tests are wrong.
Um,
Because if no dye showed up in the spring from the dually, I don't understand how that's a real
The dye tests aren't wrong, but they have been running the dye test they mentioned. I think that's the one where it was a dry period, so some of the dye didn't show up just because of the conditions at the time.
1900 days later.
Yeah, so it's slower because of the dry conditions, not have as much water, you don't have as much
Some of
water.
the wells showed up in 3 to 5 days.
I think,
Now those are, they're the ones.
That are connected.
They're-
Yeah.
But we also
Again,
use a
but
lot
is
of
it that
well.
again, hold on, as I've discussed before, I mean, you know, and it's a good question, I'd be happy to ask Dr. Bill. You know, only one thing, I guess, to start this off, I made the comment last time, in my mind, data and models are somewhat interchangeable. The scientists are not. He wanted me to point out that his stuff is not based on the model, but data. As the data changes, he updates, his opinion on things. You know, Dave, back to the trigger thing, that's why he wanted the number 1 trigger to be dually and not spring flow, because the spring flow has varied too much. It can be a secondary trigger, but not a primary. Also along those lines, I mean, just to restate something, in chapter 36, that's what we're bound by the law on this. If we don't like the law, we'll lobby Austin to change it. But what chapter 36 says is we have to balance, conservation and use, i.e. property rights. And I tell everybody, if we come away from these meetings with everybody equally mad at me, well, then the committee's probably done its job. This, Dave said he wanted to read this. This is the first time I've seen it. But we're getting down to, proposals and what we can or cannot agree on.
Well, we gotta do the right thing.
Well, if we knew what the right thing was, it'd be easy to do. I mean, there's different, they're kind of like belly buttons. Opinions.
Pace makes waste too. You do
Oh.
things too fast. And don't
we're not-
take it all into consideration and just think about one little spot. That's
No,
not what
that is not my intention. That's not the goal. That's not what we're going to do. I'm feeling a little pressed tonight because I don't want people to miss out on this meeting at 5:30.
And what's that?
It's a proposal by the county to get the creek, from here down to the bridge to flow a little more efficiently to avoid some flooding on the north side of Maine. There are different rumors going around. I've heard they're talking about taking out some trees and stuff. I've also heard no, there are no trees coming out. It's just some brush in a couple of places. It stems from a lawsuit from the last flood. Yeah, I mean, but anyway, it's an important meeting, people, so that's why I'm rushing a little bit tonight.
If I can respond to the pace makes waste, I would agree with that conceptually, but this conservation board was started in 2002. It's been about a generation and nothing's been done in terms of mandatory restrictions. So I don't think that really applies to the whole process. It's time for us to take action, I think, and actually make a difference.
And I think you including that period for the 5-year period to calibrate the plan that makes.
But again, addressing that, I mean, my understanding is that, chapter 36 does not require, drought management plans, but then we fall back under this balancing conservation and use thing.
But as
Yes.
actually, the language of that 36 does specifically, it mentions conservation, but it specifically says that the plan must address drought conditions. That is in the law.
Greg told me that it's not required.
I mean, I guess it doesn't elaborate very much, but it does say that it has to
There
address
haven't
drought
been court
conditions.
cases enough to clarify some of the inconsistencies in the law. But we're supposed the board is charged with balancing use and conservation.
Yes.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We're not gonna rush through it, but at the same time, it's time to get proposals on the table from, the all sides of this.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this, okay, fine, we've got a starting point, here. I want to hear all of it. And, and I appreciate that, it's a lot to go through. Hell, I was handed, a lot of homework when I sat down here that I haven't seen before, to read through. But at our next meeting, what I would like is for, concrete proposals from everybody. If some of you get together, if you do the same one, I don't care.
Well,
But
I know I've done water availability tests, so I've done a public water system and stuff. We had to drill 2 wells. One well away from the well we were pumping, we had to pump it like 48 hours. And it's a cone effect. The closer you are to that well, the more cone effect it is. The further you are away, they don't even notice, you know what I'm saying? But that's up in Trenton, up in Van Derrick. And it all makes sense, because the closer you are to these spring pumping, guarantee it has more effect than anything or above it. 5 days from the Shahan, Stock Tank, and Animal Village well, 5 to 6 days, that dye showed up. I mean, that water's going directly to the spring.
The dye is not the only factor, though. You keep
No,
talking
but
about
that's
the
what
dye.
it's
That's a factor. And
Well, it's telling you
Dr.
how the
Bill
water
is
runs.
fully aware of the dye test. I can guarantee it. Guaranteed Dr. Bill knows what the dye test did and where the dye went and where it came. You can ask him, but that's not the only factor in the deal. The dye test is one of several,
Right.
and I'm not a hydrologist, but Dr. Bill, who is for now our trusted scientist, there are others, but he has established which wells are highly correlated, and there's charts, you can see them. Dooley well is the highest correlated. I don't know what the dye did in Dooley well, but it's the highest correlated well in the county. It's in zone 1, which he said was the highest zone correlated. Most of the farming, most of the irrigation is being done in zone 1. It's also in zone 2, and there are several wells in zone 2 that are highly correlated to the spring flow. The spring flow right now is like 1.5 CFS. It doesn't even make it past the clubhouse at the golf course. So there's water in the spring head, but it gets to the golf course, it's dry, you go to the Red Bridge, you're in dirt. So you go south of the fort, anybody who has land down there, 0. Dry as a bone. So, in my mind, the spring is 100% correlated to the drought condition in the county. If it's below 2, like it is right now, there is some, need to get on this.
Well, I totally agree that that well is effective, but it's affected by our pumping, but it isn't affected by the spring. I would say no, because I can tell you why. Because we have a head of those wells. We have continuous pressure.
And that's not
And
really
we're
what
within
it
a
is
mile.
either.
We're within a mile of that one.
So how much pressure is there on, these example wells? So that, maybe there's 50 pounds when it's good and maybe there's 20 pounds when it's bad. I don't know the numbers, but they're correlated.
All right,
And so that's what you need to
in the
know.
weeds here.
But in the conclusion of the dye test, it says right here, and no detections of dye from Dooley well in Pinto Valley went to the spring, Moras Springs. Not that there was some, it was none.
It also says the hydraulic gradient may have been insufficient to induce groundwater flow to the springs, or travel times and dilution were greatly depressed.
Okay, and you said because of drought earlier. They stuck that deal down there 600 feet in that hole and pumped it into that water. So I don't have nothing to do with dry.
And
Now in the cave where they detected it, yes, you can maybe say that, but it did show up in that cave. I'm not questioning that. I'm questioning the Dooley well because it always has water, it's always got pressure. So they had to force that dye in. So to say that drought has anything to do with it, it's not 100% true.
I will get an answer to that question.
Bill can
Back to, again, I don't want to get too much in the weeds. What I envision this group doing is eventually we're going to come up with, bullet points, what should be the trigger? With a lot of different opinions, I mean, you know, Dooley Spring, combination thereof, or something else. You know, we're back to the old ballot, but we'll have several opinions under different bullet points. We'll give it to Bill and Greg to flange up the numbers. You know, Dr. Bill has said if pumping is limited to 5,000, you know, there should be some spring flow. Definition of some, I mean.
Yeah,
You know,
8 or less, whatever you say.
Okay. You know, but then mathematically, that you work backwards from that, and you know, let them come up with, you know, the zone 1, zone 2 thing. Zone 3, you know, probably you know, no curtailment there because there's no direct correlation for Dr. Bill.
Like looking at this zone 2 right farm down there south of Standard Lane, you know, it's kind of ironic that he just puts the line right there on my south fence. You know, there's not even a testing well, there's nothing. How is this model saying that I'm correlated to the spring at all? There's nothing even within 8 miles, probably 10 miles. But yet I'm in zone 2. That don't make much sense.
The zones, Charlie, you could correct me if I'm way off base. The zones were designed on what he found was the correlation, right? Like there was a preponderance of high correlation in zone 2. It was highest in zone 1, but those zones were established by where the wells are
There's not a
correlated.
monitoring well within
Yeah,
10 miles.
there are.
Right here.
I think there are a couple
Yeah.
if you look around.
Look, that's
I'll-
the dots right there. That's
Again,
well.
yeah,
We'll
I'll
show
ask
you.
that if it's a valid
We are
question.
in the weeds here. Move on. We got-
Well, I know, but it's a valid question to come up with. Again, my feeling is for the purposes of what we're doing, you know,
Doctor,
this may change, but this is what we have for now.
because we're just going around and around in circles without
should
Dr.
be.
Bill. He needs to be here so we can answer
And,
this question.
Or even more expert.
Something, because it's,
You know,
it's
Dr. Bill is not speaking.
well, no, but I do believe that
I mean,
that's
there's a
what.
lot of people.
I can't speak for the board, but I do believe that you know, they hired him. You know, they're gonna put a lot of weight in what he does. I mean, part of this is to come up with something, and then the next step is nothing will be done unless it gets by the board. So we've got to come up with a compromise somewhere that you know, that the board will take action on. That's why I want, you know, different proposals for, you know, for trigger, you know, for, you know, zone 1, 2, 3 cutbacks, what ends it, when does it happen? Obviously, we've got to have a complete the crop thing. You know, if you do it and this is a question for y'all, what time of year? I mean, you know, if you do it in the fall, so you plan for your spring, is that the best time? I mean,
if you
certainly don't want it to drop,
If
you know,
you go
March.
off if you go off like the EAA, which is the golden standard for the state, basically, you know, it's January 1 to December 31st. That's the month.
Well, that's what I'm saying, you know, we don't want this to kick in necessarily say March 1st, you haven't planted
January 1
yet,
to
but you've
December
already
31st.
bought your seed
I
and
mean, because
done
that's
it.
how you got to turn your water in. You got to turn your water reports in. You know, it's a calendar year, so
But
that's
another,
how it would be.
the reason we have the triggers right is because the plan goes into effect when the triggers are met, so we can't predict when that will be. And the farmers can't either, no one can, but once those triggers are met, that's when the plan goes into effect. So if they planted their seed by then, they get to finish the crop. But if they haven't yet, they're
Not
under
just
the
planted,
jurisdiction
but
of
bought,
the
or
Well,
if there's a lot of planting before you plant.
It's fertilizer and all that.
Yeah, so
Can
I mean,
You got a lot.
you know,
Could I ask Mr. Hildebrand, because you talked a bit about this last meeting, EAA does something like they allow you to finish out a crop, but do they have any sort of stipulation for buying preliminary materials or anything like that?
Yeah,
Or is
it's
it,
the finish the crop situation, where you finish out that crop and then you start into the next one. So it's kind of giving you a heads up on planting, basically, is what it does.
well, in other words, they give lead time is what she's asking.
Well, yeah, I mean,
Well, the Edwards never said you can't plant
Yeah.
Oh, no, and that's,
I mean, that's never,
that's what,
the case.
yeah, you can plant whatever, but they're talking about for
You're
water
telling me I
plant.
can't plant for a year, you do something.
Oh, no, you can plant, you just can't.
No, you're right. I mean, I didn't, if I implied that, that's.
Well, I'm just saying, I can understand doing one crop. You know, but you gotta get one crop in there, I can't make it one.
Right.
And then you got a hay on there, you can't let it go for it.
Well, we can't let the springs go dry every summer because people's property
Right.
values depend on that spring being full.
That's-
And that's why we gotta,
that's-
that's why we gotta do this
It's the
right.
same
That-
argument.
that-
We all
that-
have economic
No,
interests.
that actually is an incorrect statement. You can let the spring go dry. We have met our
Yeah, we've
gifts.
seen it happen.
That's not the issue. The issue is balancing conservation and use. All right, so this blanket statement that you can't let the springs go dry is not true.
I know it's physically possible for the springs to go dry, but I'm saying they're both important economic considerations.
You cannot limit us to the point where you have your water and we don't have ours. That's
Likewise.
not the way it's going to work.
No, this is conservation, and it requires everybody giving wills. So if y'all aren't willing to conserve, no reason to be on
Well, I can tell you what the
No,
board did.
no, they wouldn't be
Last
here.
year, I was gonna plant a second crop. I have my seed bought and everything. They sent out the letter and said, could you please conserve water? I took the seed back, I didn't plant my second crop. I could have used twice as much water as I didn't. Well, I did conserve. But you can't take my livelihood. I put millions of dollars, you know, and I charged it. I put an investment.
Well, this isn't the only place on earth you can farm, but it's the only place on earth you have those
That's not a consideration. That's not a consideration.
The springs are not a consideration.
No, you heard.
Trying to tell somebody that they need to farm somewhere else is not a solution. That's
I think
Telling
David
someone
said
they
this
limit
last
the
week.
water is what this conservation system was set up to do by the legislature.
right.
So there is a limit to how much you can plant and water, and that is what we're dealing with. That system that the legislature.
They're just limited to how much water, and if they want to plant their whole field, and they're only limited to water half the field maybe, they're just not gonna have enough water for the whole thing.
And you can plant and just take the risk.
Well, none of these plans that I've ever read, and this one I've never read that Mr. Connolly just gave us, none of them cut off anybody. And none of them are guaranteed to bring the spring back to, a beautiful flowing spring either. There's no guarantees, but none of these drought management plans, shut anybody off. 20% is not gonna kill anybody's year, as far as I know, in the farming business. If we have an extreme drought, and it starts with 20% reduction in your monthly allowed water, that's not killing your crop. That's a 20% decrease in the amount you can grow, if that happened. And it might not even be a 20% decrease in the amount of crop you could grow, because you could play it where my crop is planted, I'm going to water it as much as I want, I'm going to get my crop. But then the 20% comes out later. There's ways to manage that 20% drop. It's not 100, it's not going to dry up while you plant it and take your profit away. As far as I know, that's not what these plans do. That's not the intent of the board. The board's not going to let that happen. That's not, our intent is not to dry you up.
For agricultural, for golf course use, for lawns use, there has to be different regulations. You can't go across the board. And they're permitted at so many gallon acre feet per acre, and you're going to limit 30%. Well, what is our permit at? How many gallons does it take for them to grow a crop? We need to visit that and see how many acre feet they got per acre, and how many acre feet they actually need to use to grow their crops throughout the year. And if you take 30%, that's only have 200% of it, they ain't gonna take them at all.
Now, this system is based not on permits,
It's not on the permit, it's
prior use.
looking at prior use.
Prior use, okay.
Yeah, which in theory, if you average 3 to 5 years, then you should get a pretty good idea of what it takes.
I hurt myself, I backed my second crop.
there's always that. I mean, you don't want to encourage.
Well, I'm just saying.
I know. I mean,
By not doing it.
yeah,
Something I would
the
say
water
on
code
that-
also says you can't waste, but yeah, I know what you're saying, but in terms of, using too much to get your average up, that's why they want to, the proposal is a look back to avoid, the year to year, well,
You know, permits are like titles too. Permanent water is like another piece of land.
another piece.
It's a title to that water.
We have title of the water, another thing you look at is transfer of title, is you want to put it.
Go to the
If you have two land lease, and you're not pumping out this well, then make sure they don't transfer from the use of this well into another well. We need to make sure they're not doing that either, and at the time of the drought.
Again,
Something I'd like to add, we can't count on your kindness of not planting a second crop. That would not be what many people might do. We can't base rules on optional compliance. Out of the kindness of your heart, please don't do this. That is not gonna work.
let's move on.
I'm just saying, it's not gonna work.
I have a question,
And that, I think
Mr.
that's not.
Optional is not optional.
Why don't we monitor some of these smaller wells? You run an ad in the newspaper, ask whose wells have dropped and had to add pipe, and who's at the bottom of the wells. And let's monitor those and see whose wells are dropping and what area affects that. I'm not so worried about the springs and what's pumping out here. I'm worried about everyone else, all these rangers and
They're home.
these little bitty Cheetos that got their own well and them losing water, as long as everyone has something to drink, we'll be pretty good. And their livestock can drink and they can farm a little. I mean, we're all here to try to make a common denominator here where everyone can make a living. But if you run out of water, and I can't produce cattle, it's the same thing as them not being able to produce livestock. Their feed, on the farm. So we need to look at all the smaller wells too, and not just monitor the big ones.
Kickapoo's just went dry, didn't it? Right up there.
Well, there was an article recently
if I go camping up there-
Kickapoo has turned off their water.
Yeah, so I can't even get water at the campground.
If you go to
up there. I gotta
Kickapoo
bring
right
my
now,
bottle.
to camp, you're supposed to bring your own water.
Yeah, see, that's
The
an
dump
indicator
station
right
is
there.
open, but the campsites are no longer providing water to Kickapoo.
It dropped 55 foot in the last 19 months.
But Ace's
Anyway,
point is important because I think it goes back to that you can avoid the cone of depression if these are wells that aren't pumping large amounts of water, if they're just for livestock or whatever. And we know that if they're dropping in times of drought, those are going to be the first warning signs of the table dropping.
But the problem is incorporating that into the plan. They're called exempt for a reason. I mean, they may be an early canary in the
They might be
mine.
a permanent well with so many acre feet, but they are the livelihood of a lot of people that are just as important as their crops.
Mhm. Oh, no, I don't have crops, but I
And
have
the whole
cattle.
county, what do I have to do to drill irrigation well to get a monitor? Is that what you're telling me? That just because I had a well that grandfathered in, or that's not an irrigation well, that it's not going to be monitored?
Exempt wells are not monitored.
I think for a trigger well, we could. Yeah.
I think it's a cost and time situation. But again, we're getting away.
And I think if you want to monitor them, it would help everybody out, because you get a bigger picture of what's happening.
I don't think that that's feasible.
Well, maybe we need to check into it a little bit.
Be happy
Maybe
with
we
that.
can check
Yeah.
with another
Yeah.
hydrologist.
I agree.
Jim, if you watch this, call me and tell me that, I'd like an answer to that.
I would like a
Fine.
solution for people that don't have water. There's got a well that pushes out the electricity. All you gotta do is put a pipe outside the fence and pile. You can come there, hook your hose up, throw it in the
Well,
tank.
and
I
I'm
mean,
not
that's
saying-
to me, when it's
I'm
really
not
dry.
blaming you for it.
Yeah, I'm not for helping anyone else.
So let's see,
I don't wanna hurt
let's find
people.
where the problem lies.
Hey, we're moving on. The next time we meet, I want specific triggers.
Specific answer.
Under,
You're asking answer to figure this out.
I think we're working with the Edwards office. That's really what we're concerned about right now.
You're saying
So we
zone
need to
one,
know the recharge, we got field view out, we go up there and put all the places that we think is going to that this way. And we watch rainfall correlation. Number one. Because, you know, just because the rain's in Brackettville, Texas, doesn't mean it's going to fill this. It's got to rain recharge. And that's direct correlation. We got 2 wells in here that are direct correlation. 3 to 5 days. Tide just shoots right to it.
This is based on Hutchison's science unit, sorry.
Okay.
I don't want to whack you in the
Where's
face,
the
but
recharge to the Edwards?
recharge is in the northwest of the county around Montel.
Okay. And where's the Trinity Edwards? It's under another region.
Yes, but we also know that aquifers, although there are 3, they're hydrologically connected. So even if you're pumping out of Edwards Trinity, it could have an impact on the Edwards. But these are the correlations, so you can see that, you know, in zone 2, which is the green part, there are still some wells that are upwards of 90–80% correlated to Las Moras Springs. And it bounces around depending on where you go. That's because the aquifer is complicated, but this is based on monitor well and well level data, so it's not just the dye test. This is more comprehensive because it's dealing with actual numbers and monitoring how the springs and the well levels relate to each other.
We need to know exactly what everyone's involved in and what affects who.
Yes.
Just because the Dooley well goes down doesn't mean it's because it's running out of the spring. Or, you know, every well's tied. Like my neighbor, closer I am to a neighbor or I'm to Lance, I can affect his well, he can affect mine. You know, by the more you pump, if you're both pumping at the same time, it's going to go down. But then you got to know what it takes. Does it, when you shut off, the rebound, how long does it take to get back? And does it get back to the same level? Or is it below that level? You know, there's a lot of things to it. It's not just as simple, and especially when we have 2 aquifers. One's charged from one area, one's charged from another.
It's not, but I think you're getting at we won't know until we try, and to have a provisional period of
why
5
should you
years.
penalize people if they're not? You know the ones that are exactly alike. And when I look at the Edwards and the spring flow, I'm looking at that's going directly to those springs. And the closer you are to the springs, the more it affects them.
Not necessarily. There's some 70s up here, but then you get below 70 when you're closer to the springs.
Yeah, but you don't know
It's
when
also a
people,
matter of how
you don't know, like the Dooley well, you don't know if I'm pumping, it's affecting the Dooley well, but is it really affecting the spring? We can make that Dooley well go up and down all day long. It's just like San Antonio, for example, the J17. Why not pump it? They'll just pump farther away. J17 just sits there. Or if they want to go down, they start sucking around, and J17 will fall out of the rock.
Put together a plan.
Well,
And I think that's a good consideration.
I think the direct correlation, that's John one, it's the Evans. That's the direct correlation. 5 to 6 days.
Well, he
some of those
is
wells go
right on
to
the
that.
Dooley well. Like whenever I pump up there, Zach Davis is pumping, Carpenter's pumping, and he's pumping, we can probably move that well, Dooley well.
Yeah.
It's not that just because it's dropping doesn't mean it's tied to the spring, because we're all sucking our water out.
But that
That's
also
not a
means the
direct
spring is
tie
not
to the
dry.
spring.
If
I
y'all
mean,
are
it's not.
sucking up
Whenever
that
we're
much
all,
water.
whenever they're running it and doing it, say no, it's dropping. Do they even know if we're pumping? Nobody's came and asked me. Nobody's came and looked. You know,
They
didn't get.
compare the level of the Dooley to the spring, and it's 90%.
Yes, you have. Yes, but I'm talking on certain days. I would say that we're moving it.
What's the number on the Dooley well, Dave? So 90%?
You have to remember, it's a model. It's not perfect. And, you know, it's a model. Dr. Bill says that.
It's over 90.
Well, again, it's based on data. If you look at those charts, I mean, the Dooley over a lengthy period of time, right? I mean, what you're talking about, you can affect it day to day,
Yes.
but it hasn't been.
Well,
It
how do
is-
you not
it
know
is
that
right.
we're not moving it whenever it's dropping? Because we're pumping it. I mean,
But
I'm within a half a mile of the Dooley well.
I know I can affect,
I have a question.
Jack Davis well.
Okay, say that we do this drought plan and we limit them on how much water they can previous year. And let's say there's 5 or 6 other irrigation wells that hadn't been used in 10 years. And all of a sudden somebody started pumping out of it. And then that just dropped even more. I mean, we need to look at other permits as well as their wells. And
so, I mean, that'd be part of the drought plan. If a well comes online then that would have to be addressed.
Well, yeah, we'll need to make sure that water, and we're in here to say that.
And can I just go back to something Mr.
This
Zappel
is just one person, or a couple people proposing.
But what we're doing is, we're now off of this, so.
No, I just saw this when we started the meeting.
You know, I've had I saw it, but maybe solve it. You take pipelines, where we got wells that are pressured up at 50 pounds or 25 pounds. You bring it to these springs, and just see how long it takes to fill those springs up. It's nothing but a dam down there. So it starts flowing. How much water does it take? I don't think it takes that much, because what's coming from this way and getting pumped is very little water.
But we're not just concerned about the springs going dry, we're concerned because when the springs go dry, the city of Brackettville also drops. So we can't pump straight into the city of Brackettville. It's about making sure that the aquifer is healthy, and the springs are a barometer of the health of the aquifer. So if they're low, and I think you mentioned y'all can control the level of the Dooley well. Well, if the Dooley well is 75% correlated to Lost Moras Springs, that means when you're making the Dooley well level change, you're making the spring level change too.
Sir.
Oh,
Yeah.
Eric, hold on.
It does.
Eric, do you know off the top of your head, what the annual acre foot usage for the city is? I've heard different numbers on. It's available. I've seen it, but I can't remember what it was.
12 million gallons a month.
It's a lot of numbers from everyone. I'm not sure.
I thought it was about 700.
All right.
I think we're fussing.
We're not.
We don't have control of it. We think we have control, but we haven't.
You turn the pin on and off.
We don't in the sense that if it doesn't rain, if it doesn't rain, we're all toast. Is the bottom line.
Do you have anything else to address?
No.
You realize
We're not.
From the Dooley well to my well, it took over 4.5 years for that tide to show up. That's how much water there is there. Why aren't those springs just shooting out of the top? They've been tied to it. It should shoot out of there.
I don't know how it works. You're not a
hydrologist.
You're not a hydrologist.
We're getting far afield. A couple of questions, Dr. Bill, I will ask, but we're moving on. You know, in terms of some of the stuff we're talking about, it's too complicated. All right. I mean, in an ideal world, yeah, we know exactly who's pumping what and when, and we can do this, that, and the other. All we have is the current science. You know, let's come up with triggers. Let's come up with timing. Let's make a proposal, put it in front of the board, and let them.
Can we? There's lots of rules, and our task is not just a drought management plan and several of those things that Dr. Bill recommended that we address other rules. But I would like to ask y'all, you know, obviously you guys are irrigating, and I saw it in Mr. Connolly's plan there. What's the thought on the monthly reporting? I know, you know, the app's coming and Jim's working on some app or whatever. But whatever it takes, a lot of these other groundwater conservation districts require monthly reports. I saw it in your recommendation. You know, what's the issue with that? Is that something that's workable, not workable? You know, the monthly reports are something Dr. Bill wanted. He wants it. It's in a lot of other plans, but you guys.
Let me have Marty. Where do we stand?
I don't know where we're at on it.
Where do we stand on getting data on a website or through an app? Where do we stand on that?
We're getting it. I have numbers and everything.
Are they published for the public?
No, because Jim has the information on that website.
Has he said when he will publish that?
I'm good with monitoring.
I can give you an exact date.
All right. Would you ask him next time you talk to him? And maybe get us an answer by Wednesday night at our regular board meeting? Because again, that's been a desire of the public for a long time, is to be able to have something either in an app or on the website where where that data is available. And frankly, I thought we would have had that by now. My understanding is that
you don't have it now.
Last fall they're saying, just first of the year, we're getting that uploaded. Would you please ask him and maybe report on Wednesday night on that aspect of it?
Will do.
Okay. All right, folks, thank you. Look at your calendar. With Easter and spring break and all that, it's a little bit tough between now and the next board meeting. At a minimum, hell. I'd like to meet, say, Monday, the 8th of April.
I'll be gone.
All of us are going to be
thousands of people.
all of us are going to be blind from looking at the eclipse.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Maybe we can get something done to make
Change
sure.
the water flow over
I
here.
think a lot of people are not gonna be there. I think the eclipse is gonna take a lot of people out.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that.
Oh, that's right.
Because they may be up in Kerrville.
I'm ready for that week, but not that day.
Well, but the problem's we've got the board meeting on the 10th, and then Eric, I guess the city council is still on Tuesday night.
That's correct, sir. Friday, what's on Friday? Or Thursday.
What, meet after the board meeting? That's fine.
No.
I mean, we don't. Obviously, we're not going to have anything prepared to present to the board by next month. So
That'd be good.
would that be? Is that more acceptable to meet on Thursday, the 11th?
Okay, I'm gonna be gone till the 12th, so 15th or 4th.
We'll meet at 5 o'clock on Thursday, the 11th. Comments?
I could do that.
Good for me.
I don't think it works over here. I don't think it works over here.
Yeah, they work. I'll be gone the 8th to the 12th.
Can you send your ideas or proposals via somebody else, or
Yeah, can I get like Logan to come in or your question might display?
I mean, or text or
I can text.
email me.
Email.
I promise I won't lose it.
Yeah.
We're talking about the 11th.
Yeah, he said anything we wanted to do.
Charlie, what
I
time?
don't get that.
I'd say 5 o'clock. Is that okay? Vic, you're the one that come over.
Can we get Dr. Bill here and any other expert?
I don't
we have
think
that's
we can get him here necessarily, but we may be
No,
able
I never
to.
got to hear him other than in the main meeting.
Well, it's on the website. The late September, it's like the 26th, 28th, somewhere in there. It was a lengthy meeting that we had at the facility over here somewhere. But the video of that entire thing is available. And and also, Janelle, his management plan, which is where all these charts and stuff came from, like the correlation of the do as well and so forth. That's all on the website. So you can look that up. All that information is readily available.
But I think the video isn't on the website, it's on YouTube, though, at Los Moras Streets. Yes, I can email it to you.
Get a 12-year-old.
I get YouTube pictures, but I don't know.
No, get away from the no.
Just fix that on
Yeah.
YouTube.
No, you're not looking at the dirty pictures. You're looking at. Thank you all. I don't want anybody to miss it at 5:30 meeting.
It's going to be
let's-
11th at what time?
I'd say 5.
So we
That would
have
go to the next one, yeah.
board meeting
5:30.
on Wednesday.
The board meeting is on the 10th.
Oh, I thought, this month.
Oh, it's a Wednesday night, 2 nights from now. Yeah, 13th.
And that's what,
I think Janelle in our meeting Wednesday at 6.
Yep.
I did, it's at 6.
And Jared will be there, will you?
Not to my knowledge. I didn't see it on the agenda.
And I set it out early.
they're not supposed to see the.
But anyway, let's start coming up. Let's start coming up with the list of proposals. All right.
Does Dr. Bill put the fault lines in?
Is he?
Does he have fault lines in on the wall?
It's in the process, I think, of considering the announcement.
I don't know how he came up with with the zones where
I just know if
whether you consider
Man,
fault
he
line,
needs to be
logically you think.
I mean, he needs to be here because we can walk around the lab and I know that he can answer some questions right off.
And you hit the
So
fault
they still
line.
on Zoom.
Yeah, I need to be here.
On TV.
And he may be able to zoom it in. I know we've got to work within a budget of what the district set aside to pay him for the year. If we use him up now, then if we're over budget, won't have to run
Really,
it.
he's the only one that knows enough to make the damn plan. They've got their heavy interest in it. We don't want the spring to go dry. We all are non-hydraulics, just looking at those numbers and charts.
And he has not
He's the
gone.
only one
Y'all are
that really
right.
Well, see, because he says in his opening slide before we get started that, you know, the spring stops, eliminating pumping will not eliminate the average flow.
Minimal, not average. It's average is
So, I mean, but that being thrown out there, that's
I think
a very
Where we are now,
I think watermelon.
we have met the DFC. Our future conditions vis-a-vis spring flow.
well, that's what I'm saying. I understand that, but what I'm saying is, he's saying that, but we have to get the zones right. I'm not saying that we're not gonna build it, that's the problem. I'm not saying that. Eye test, everything goes that way. Yet one guy is saying, he said it's going to and they're cool. The guy is going around and saying, yeah, so you can't get much of that. So why do you, I'm saying this is only like so too, they don't even have a long-term well within 10 miles. They don't have them.
I think we need more.
So how can you go in that, like that's the question, how can you see the down there where that brackish water, and you can see the water is fine. On highway, how am I?
Are you in zone one?
Oh, in zone 2. Almost 693.
You'll be curtailed west.
I understand that. But how does he even know that?
One ton singular.
Zone 2 is going to trigger off something. I mean, why do we even know the trigger? There's not even a long-term well within 2 miles. Yeah, I'm going to get
I think they
I'm not bothering anybody. There's nothing going on. You know, like somebody's questioning that their well's going dry. They know it. I mean, that's what I'm saying. That's
No,
you know, yeah,
He needs to be, he needs to show him.
sure.
Because we're putting a lot of faith in we're not getting any pressure on us.
this one failed response because he's watching the thing. We'll find
So
out.
I wonder if we could compile a list of questions from the
Email to me.
Well, but the district's failed. Why can't he just sit here?
Because there's an annual budget, and I don't know how much it is.
We get him the TV.
It's not like damn water. But there, it's just,
If we use up his budget now, then we'll have money for it.
Has he been here since
He was here in December.
Came in one time. Yeah.
And it's recorded.
Do you remember a board meeting where we board hired another consulting firm that Dr. Miller recommended to come in and study the fault lines?
When did that happen?
About 2012.
November meeting.
I don't remember that.
It was a November meeting, Charlie. The November meeting.
It's November. It was November.
November meeting.
I remember it now.
He's Dr. Bill is incorporated falls. He's got $60,000 approval from the November meeting to incorporate the falls. He's doing that now. Expected to have an update, I think, in May.
So he was doing it.
Dr. Bill recommended the consulting firm to come in and study the faults because he didn't have the correct technology. Is that right, what he said?
I think, I'm not sure the details. I know he is
I know
incorporating
it's
the falls.
major deal. So I think there's a study going on that, but we don't have that information yet.
There's a study here too by Edwards Aquifer Authority that shows where the fault is, and it's west of most is on one.
Bill is.
Well, that was about so much more technology than there was in a lot of this.
This was in 2015.
That's pretty good. We had a lot of scientific data here.
Thank you all.